I'm taking full credit for everything we've created together." The words echoed through the packed theater as Nathan stood center stage, microphone in hand. Our final collaborative performance, the culmination of 7 years of partnership, and he chose this moment to stake his claim. Hundreds of eyes darted between Nathan and me, standing in the wings where I'd been preparing for the second act. The audience murmured in confusion. Our team backstage froze in shock. I stepped onto the stage, took the microphone he extended with a triumphant smirk, and simply said, "Enjoy the spotlight, Nathan. You've certainly earned this moment." Then I walked off, leaving him blinking in, confusion at my calm demeanor. My name is Eliza Chen. I'm 34 years old, and until that night, I had been one half of Illuminate, the performance duo that had revolutionized modern dance and visual storytelling across the country. I had spent 7 years pouring my creativity, technical expertise, and heart into our collaborative work. 7 years watching Nathan take increasingly more credit during interviews. 7 years of having my contributions minimized while his were magnified. But I wasn't unprepared for this moment. In fact, I had been waiting for it. The journey to that night began 18 months earlier. We had just finished our most successful tour to date. 12 cities, sold-out venues, standing ovations every night. Our unique blend of contemporary dance, visual projections, and interactive storytelling had finally broken through to mainstream recognition. We were celebrating at the after-party when I overheard Nathan talking to a producer from Vanguard Entertainment, in technical aspects. "Oh, that's just Eliza's contribution. The real creative vision, the narrative structure, the emotional core, that's all mine. She's basically just the tech support." I stood frozen behind a column, champagne flute in hand, as Nathan continued. "Eventually, I'll develop a show that's purely my vision. Something bigger. Something that doesn't need her limitations holding it back." The producer nodded thoughtfully. "We should talk more about that. Vanguard is always looking for fresh solo talent." I slipped away before they saw me, my mind racing. This wasn't just casual backstage politics. This was calculated erasure of my work. The next morning, I called my older brother, Daniel, a corporate attorney in Boston. "I need your advice," I said, explaining what I'd overheard. "I'm not sure what to do." "Document everything," Daniel said immediately. "Every email, every notebook, every recording of your development process. Start building a record that proves your creative input." "It's not that simple," I replied. "Creative collaboration is messy. We don't neatly divide who came up with what." "Then, start now," Daniel advised. "From this point forward, keep detailed records and talk to an intellectual property attorney." I followed his advice, though it felt foreign to my nature. I had always been the trusting one, the one who believed in our partnership while Nathan played the charismatic frontman. I was content working behind the scenes, focusing on the art itself rather than the recognition. But now, I started paying closer attention. I began meticulously documenting our creative process. I recorded our brainstorming sessions on my phone, with Nathan's knowledge, for reference, I told him. I dated every sketch, every piece of choreography I developed. I saved every email, every text message where we discussed concepts. I also installed a small camera in our studio space to capture our development work. Again, with a casual explanation about studying our movement patterns that Nathan accepted, without question. Meanwhile, I watched Nathan's behavior shift as our success grew. He began scheduling separate interviews where I wasn't present. Our joint social media accounts gradually featured less of my work and more solo shots of him. Press releases emphasized his vision while reducing my role to technical collaboration. 3. Months after I began documenting, Nathan proposed something new. "I think we should form an official company," he said over lunch. "Illuminate Productions. Make it all legitimate with contracts, roles, the whole thing." "That sounds sensible," I replied, careful to keep my tone neutral. Equal partnership? Well, he said, stirring his coffee, I was thinking I'd be the creative director and you'd be technical director. Makes sense with our strengths, right? I nodded slowly. And ownership percentages? He glanced up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he recovered. I was thinking 70-30. I handle all the business aspects, the networking, the promotion. I see, I said. Let me think about it. We should both consult with attorneys to make sure it's structured properly. Always so practical, Eliza, he laughed. That's why we work well together. I dream big, you handle the details. I smiled back, but inside I felt something hardening. The casual dismissal of my creative contributions as mere details confirmed everything. I met with Jennifer Wu, an attorney specializing in arts and entertainment law, the following week. After reviewing the documentation I'd been gathering, she leaned back in her chair. He's setting you up, she said bluntly. This company formation would formalize your subordinate position. Once established, he could eventually push you out completely while retaining rights to all your joint work. What should I do? I asked. Keep documenting. Continue acting as if everything is normal, but do not sign anything he presents without having me review it first. And I have another suggestion. We should register copyright on your individual contributions immediately. For the next 6 months, I led a double life. Outwardly, I remained Nathan's dedicated creative partner. We developed our most ambitious show yet, Reflections, a piece exploring identity, memory, and transformation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Privately, I worked with Jennifer to protect my intellectual property. I registered copyrights for my individual choreographic works, my projection designs, and my segment of our written narrative structures. I kept meticulous records of which elements were uniquely mine versus our collaborative pieces. Meanwhile, Nathan grew bolder. During a EI major interview with Performance Arts Monthly, he referred to himself as the creator of Illuminate rather than co-creator. When the interviewer asked about my role, he smiled charismatically. Eliza is brilliant with execution. I come up with the concepts, the emotional journey, and she helps translate that vision into technical reality. I saw the article when it was published and added it to my growing file. You need to confront him, my friend Sasha urged during one of our weekly coffee meetups. Sasha had been my roommate in dance school years ago before becoming a successful choreographer herself. Not yet, I replied. The timing isn't right. He's taking advantage of you, Eliza. Everyone in the community is noticing it. People talk about how he's gradually erasing your contribution. Let them talk, I said calmly. And let Nathan believe he's succeeding. What Nathan didn't know was that while he was busy claiming credit for our work, I had been developing something entirely my own. In the early mornings before our rehearsals and late at night afterward, I was creating a solo piece called Emergence, a multimedia performance about finding one's voice and stepping into the light. I had also been having quiet conversations with directors of art centers and theaters across the country, not as part of Illuminate, but as Eliza Chen, independent artist. A year after I'd overheard that conversation at the after-party, Nathan came to me with a contract for our new company. Just as Jennifer had predicted, the terms would have given him controlling interest and primary creative credit for all our past and future work. This looks comprehensive, I said, flipping through the pages. I'll need to review it carefully before signing. Don't you trust me? He asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. Of course, I lied smoothly. But this is business. We both need to protect ourselves. He frowned slightly. I've already signed my copy. We need to file this by next week to secure the funding for the national tour. I'll have it back to you in time, I promised. Instead, I took it straight to Jennifer. This is worse than we anticipated, she said after reviewing it. This clause here, it would assign all your previous work to the new company, which he would control. And this non-compete would prevent you from creating similar performances independently for 5 years. He's planning to cut me out completely, I said, feeling strangely calm. The national tour would be his launching pad for a solo career. Exactly, Jennifer confirmed. But we're ready for him. Here's the counteroffer we've prepared. The document she handed me was beautiful in its simplicity. It acknowledged our equal partnership, protected both our interests, and contained specific clauses about credit attribution and decision-making authority. He'll never sign this, I said. Jennifer smiled. No, he won't. And that's part of the plan. 2 days later, I presented the counter-proposal to Nathan. As expected, he rejected it immediately. This isn't what we discussed, he said, his voice tight. This completely changes the company structure. It makes it an equal partnership, I corrected. Which is what we've always been, Nathan. Look, he said, softening his approach. I understand. You want protection. But I'm the public face of Illuminate. Audiences come to see my performances, my artistic vision. The industry recognizes me as the creative force, because you've made sure that's what they believe, I replied calmly. His expression changed, wariness replacing confidence. What does that mean? It means I know what you've been doing. The separate interviews, the gradually changing narrative about who creates what, the plans you've discussed with Vanguard Entertainment. His face paled slightly. You're being paranoid. No, I'm being observant. Sign the equal partnership agreement, or we continue as we have been, informal collaborators with individual ownership of our contributions. He studied me for a long moment. Fine. No formal company then. We'll continue as before. I nodded, knowing exactly what would happen next. 3 weeks later, Nathan announced our biggest performance yet, a special one-night showcase at the prestigious Hammond Theater, with representatives from major art foundations, entertainment companies, and venues from across the country in attendance. This is it, Eliza, he said, eyes bright with excitement. Our breakthrough moment. I smiled and nodded, throwing myself into the preparations while continuing my parallel plans. The night of the Hammond Theater showcase arrived. The first act went flawlessly, our best work yet. The audience was entranced by our story of two individuals whose separate journeys eventually intertwined to create something greater than either could achieve alone. The irony was painful. During intermission, Nathan was vibrating with energy. They love it, he said. Did you see the Vanguard executive's face during the mirror sequence? He was completely captivated. I nodded. Everything's going perfectly. I'm going to add something special for the introduction to the second act, he said. A little unscripted moment while you're setting up the next projection sequence. Whatever you think is best, I replied. That's when it happened. As the audience settled back into their seats after intermission, Nathan walked center stage, basking in the spotlight. Thank you all for coming tonight, he began. Before we continue, I want to share something important. This performance marks a transition point for me artistically. He paused dramatically. While Eliza and I have collaborated on previous works, I want to clarify that I am the creator and artistic director of Illuminate. The concepts, the narrative structures, the emotional core, those are my contributions. Going forward, I'll be developing these ideas further as a solo artist. I'm taking full credit for everything we've created together, as is my right as the true creative force behind our success. The audience murmured in confusion. From the wings, I saw our technicians exchanging shocked glances. Our dancers, waiting for the second act to begin, stared in disbelief. That's when I walked calmly onto the stage, took the microphone, and delivered my prepared response. Enjoy the spotlight, Nathan. You've certainly earned this moment. I walked off stage, but not to leave in defeat. Instead, I gave a subtle nod to Marcus, our lighting director who had worked with us for years and had become a close friend. He understood immediately. The theater darkened completely for a moment. Then, a single spotlight illuminated a screen lowering from the ceiling. "What's happening?" I heard Nathan ask from center stage. "This isn't part of the show." The screen came to life, showing a split screen of 2 video feeds, both from our studio. On the left was Nathan, speaking to a Vanguard representative. "Once I establish full credit for the Illuminate concepts, we can phase her out completely." On the right was footage of our creative process, showing me developing the very choreography, projections, and narrative structures he had just claimed as solely his. The videos continued, showing a montage of evidence. Nathan instructing a publicist to minimize my role in press releases. Me creating the signature visual effects that had become our trademark. Nathan telling a venue manager that he was the sole creative force, while I was merely technical support. The audience sat in stunned silence. When the lights came back up, I returned to the stage, standing beside a visibly shaken Nathan. "T is collaborative," I said into the microphone, my voice steady. "Creation is rarely the product of a single mind. I would have been happy continuing our partnership with proper acknowledgement of both our contributions." I turned to face Nathan. "Directly, but you chose another path." I addressed the audience again. "In your programs tonight, you'll find an insert with information about my new solo project, Emergence, premiering next month. I hope to see some of you there." With that, I handed the microphone back to Nathan and walked off stage. The second act never happened. The audience sat in stunned silence before erupting into conversations. Many stood up, looking at their programs where my insert, placed there by supportive staff members before the show, detailed my new independent work. Nathan attempted to regain control, calling for the second act to begin, but our dancers and technicians had already made their choice. One by one, they walked off stage, leaving him alone in the spotlight. Later that night, as I sat in my apartment with Sasha, Daniel, and Jennifer, my phone exploded with messages. Some from angry Nathan, others from industry professionals who had been in the audience, expressing support and interest in my solo work. "Was it worth it?" Sasha asked. 7 years of partnership destroyed in a single night? "It was destroyed long before tonight," I replied. This was just the final scene. My brother Daniel raised his glass. "To new beginnings." Jennifer smiled. "And to preparation meeting opportunity." The aftermath was swift and dramatic. Nathan attempted damage control, claiming the videos were manipulated, taken out of context. But too many people had witnessed his behavior over the years. Too many in the industry had heard his dismissive comments about my contributions. More importantly, I had built a solid legal foundation. The copyrights I had registered, the documentation I had gathered, they protected me from any claims he might make on my future work. 3 months later, Emergence premiered to critical acclaim. The piece, exploring themes of silencing, recognition, and rebirth, resonated with audiences in a way I hadn't anticipated. What began as a single performance expanded into a national tour. Meanwhile, Nathan struggled to recreate the magic of our collaborative work on his own. Without my technical innovations and narrative sensibilities, his performances lacked the depth and impact that had made Illuminate successful. 1 year after that fateful night at the Hammond Theater, I received a text message from Nathan. "Can we talk? Please." We met at a small cafe near my new studio. Nathan looked tired, humbled. "I've been trying to understand where it all went wrong," he said, after we'd settled with our coffees. "It went wrong when you decided our partnership was a stepping stone rather than a destination," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I got caught up in it all, the recognition, the praise. It became addictive." "I understand ambition," I said. "What I couldn't accept was erasure." "I'm struggling," he admitted. "Turns out I need your creativity as much as you needed my stage presence." I studied him for a moment. The Nathan I had known would never have admitted such dependency. What do you want, Nathan? A second chance. Not immediately. Not even soon. But someday, maybe we could collaborate again. As equals this time. I considered his words carefully before responding. I can't answer that now. I'm focused on my own journey, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. As I left the cafe, I reflected on how differently I carried myself now. The woman who had been content to remain in the wings, who had accepted diminishment to maintain peace, she was gone. In her place stood someone who understood her worth, who had learned that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't immediate confrontation, but patient, methodical preparation. My new production company, Chen Creative Works, now employed 15 artists and technicians, including several who had walked off stage that night in solidarity. We were developing innovative performance pieces that blended technology and storytelling in ways Illuminate had only begun to explore. I had discovered something valuable through this painful experience. Recognition for your work isn't just about ego or accolades. It's about establishing the foundation upon which you can build your future. It's about ensuring that your voice isn't silenced, your contributions aren't erased. Sometimes the most profound revenge isn't about destroying another person. It's about refusing to let them destroy what you've created. It's about reclaiming your narrative and transforming it into something even more powerful than before. As for Nathan, I heard he eventually found a new artistic direction, mentoring young performers and openly crediting their contributions. Perhaps he had learned something too. The betrayal that had once threatened to define me had instead become merely a chapter in a much longer, more interesting story. One where I held the pen and wrote my own ending,